Johns Hopkins, one of the most respected institutions in the country, the Nuclear Threat Initiative, NTI, and the intelligence group at The Economist collaborated to evaluate the problems of the worldwide preparedness for pandemics, essentially. And I think in November, Sam came out to see me with Ernie Maurice, former Secretary of Energy, who now is the CEO of NTI. He and Sam are co-chairman. And Beth Cameron, who did a lot of work on this report, came out to see me. And they gave me, in November, I believe, of last year, they gave me this appraisal. And the opening line, if you'll turn the page, this is the opening line of this 300-page tome. Biological threats, natural, intentional, or accidental, in any country can pose risk to global health, international security, and the worldwide economy. And this book was prepared in order to evaluate the preparedness of the various countries and rank them. We ranked pretty well, but all of the countries got a failing grade, basically. Now, you would think with the prestige of Johns Hopkins and The Economist, along with people like Sam and Ernie, et cetera, that this would have gotten some attention. And again, Sam, if you'll turn to the next page, Sam and the others went on YouTube on October 24th, 2019, and they have racked up, as of a couple days ago, 1,498 views. Now, my friend Bill Gates was delivering the same warning at a TED Talk some years back, and he's gotten a lot more views, but it just says something about the fact that you're going to get bolts from the blue, and you can read papers about them, and you can talk about what'll happen if some, as they used to, the fellows at Sigma, Solomon used to tell me, some 25 Sigma event comes along, and they say that'll happen once in the life of the universe, and then it happens to them a couple of times in a month, and they go broke. You just don't know what's going to happen. At least in my view, that America's tailwind is not exhausted. You're going to get a fine result if you own equities over a long period of time. And the idea that equities will not produce better results than the 30-year Treasury bond, which yields 1.25% now. It's taxable income. It's the aim of the Federal Reserve to have 2% a year inflation. Equities are going to outperform that bond. They're going to outperform Treasury bills. They're going to outperform that money you've stuck under your mattress. I mean, they are a enormously sound investment, as long as they're an investment and they're not a gambling device or something that you think you can safely, buy on margin or whatever it may be. It's interesting that stocks offer, stocks are we always look at stocks as just being a part of a business. I mean, stocks are a small part of a business. If in 1789 you'd saved a small amount of money, and it wasn't easy to save, you might have bought, with those savings, you might have bought a tiny, tiny plot of property. Maybe you bought a house that could be rented to somebody, but you didn't really have the chance to buy in with 10 different people who were developing businesses and who were putting presumably putting their own money in, and that would have the American tailwind behind. And of the 10, a reasonably high percentage would succeed in a way and earn decent returns. But those are the choices you might have had to do with savings. And they started offering bonds originally, and there again you got a limited return, but the return may have been, in those days, may have been 5 or 6% or something of the sort. But you can't buy risk-free bonds. I mean, the yardstick for me is always the U.S. Treasury, and when somebody offers you quite a bit more than the U.S. Treasury, there's usually a reason. There's more risk. But going back to stocks, people bring the attitude to them too often that because they are liquid and quoted minute by minute, that it's important that you develop an opinion on them minute by minute. Now, that's really foolish when you think about it. And that's something Graham taught me in 1949. I mean, that single thought. Stocks were parts of businesses and not just little things that moved around on charts. Or charts were very popular in those days, and whatever it may be. Imagine for a moment that you decided to invest money now, and you bought a farm. And the farmland around here, let's say you bought 160 acres, and you bought it at X per share, or per acre. And the farmer next to you had 160 identical acres, same contour, same quality of soil quality. So it was identical. And that farmer next door to you was a very peculiar character, because every day that farmer with the identical farm said, "I'll sell you my farm, or I'll buy your farm at a certain price," which he would name. Now, that's a very obliging neighbor. I mean, that's got to be a plus to have a fellow like that with the next farm. You don't get that with farms. You get it with stocks. If you own 100 shares of General Motors, on Monday morning, somebody will buy your 100 shares or sell you another 100 shares at exactly the same price, and that goes on 5 days a week. But just imagine if you had a farmer doing that. When you bought the farm, you looked at what the farm would produce. That was what went through your mind. You were saying to yourself, "I'm paying X dollars per acre. I think I'll get so many bushels of corn or soybeans on average. Some years good, some years bad. Some years the price will be good, some years the price will be bad, etc." But you think about the potential of the farm. And now you get this idiot that buys a farm next to you, and on top of that, he's sort of a manic depressive and drinks, maybe smokes a little pot. So his numbers just go all over the place. Now, the only thing you have to do is to remember that this guy next door is there to serve you and not to instruct you. You bought the farm because you thought the farm was had the potential. You don't really need a quote on it. If you bought in with John D. Rockefeller or Andrew Carnegie, and there were never any quotes. Well, there were quotes later on, but basically you bought into the business, and that's what you're doing when you buy stocks. But you get this added advantage that you do have this neighbor who you're not obliged to listen to at all, who is going to give you a price every day, and he's going to have his ups and downs, and maybe he'll name a silly price that he'll buy at, in which case you sell if you want to, or maybe he'll name a very low price and you'll buy his farm from him. But you don't have to, and you don't want to put yourself in a position to where you have to. So stocks have this enormous inherent advantage of people yelling out prices all the time to you. And many people turn that into a disadvantage. And of course, many people can profit in one way or another from telling you that they can tell you what this farmer's going to yell out tomorrow or next, your neighboring farmer's going to yell out tomorrow or next week or next month. There's huge money in it. So people tell you that it's important and they know, and that you should pay a lot of attention to their thoughts about what price changes should be, or you tell yourself that there should be this great difference. But the truth is, if you owned the businesses you liked prior to the virus arriving, it changes prices and it changes, but nobody's forcing you to sell. And if you really like the business and you like the management you're in with, and the business hasn't fundamentally changed, and I'll get to that a little when I report on Berkshire, which I will soon, I promise. The stocks have an enormous advantage, and you still can bet on America, but you can't bet unless you're willing and have an outlook to independently decide that you want to own a cross-section of America, because I don't think most people are in a position to pick single stocks. A few maybe, but on balance, I think people are much better off buying a cross-section of America and just forgetting about it. If I'd done that when I got out of college, it's all I had to do to make 100 for one and then collect dividends on top of it, which would increase substantially over time. The American tailwind is marvelous. American business represents, and it's going to have interruptions, and you're not going to foresee the interruptions, and you do not want to get yourself in a position where those interruptions can affect you, either because you're leveraged or because you're psychologically unable to handle looking at a bunch of numbers. If you really had a farm, and you had this neighbor, and one day he offered you $2,000 an acre, and the next day he offers you $1,200 an acre, and maybe the day after that he offers you $800 an acre, are you really going to feel that at $2,000 an acre, when you had evaluated what the farm would produce, are you going to let this guy drive you into thinking I better sell because his number keeps coming in lower all the time? It's a very, very, very important matter to bring the right psychological approach to owning common stocks. But I will tell you, if you bet on America and sustain that position for decades, you're going to do better than, in my view, far better than owning Treasury securities, or far better than following people who tell you that what the farmer's going to yell out next. There's huge amounts of money that people pay for advice they really don't need, and for advice where the person giving it can be very well meaning in it and believe their own line. But the truth is that you can't deliver superior results to everybody by just having them trade around a business. If you bought into a business that's going to deliver what the business produces, and the idea that you can outsmart the person next to you, or that the person advising you can outsmart the person sitting next to you is well, it's really the wrong approach. So find businesses, get a cross section. In my view, for most people, the best thing to do is to own the S&P 500 index fund. People will try and sell you other things because there's more money in it for them if they do. And I'm not saying that that's a conscious act on their part. Most good salespeople believe their own baloney. I mean, that's part of being a good salesperson. And I'm sure I've done plenty of that in my life too. But it's very human if you keep repeating something often enough. That's why lawyers have the witnesses keep saying things over and over again. That by the time they get on the witness stand, they'll believe it, whether it was true in the first place or not. But you are dealing with something fundamentally advantageous, in my view, in owning common stocks. I will bet on America the rest of my life, and I hope my successors at Berkshire do it. Now, we do it in two different ways. We do it by buying entire businesses, and we buy parts of businesses. And I would like to emphasize that, well, I'd like to give you a few figures that will tie in from our activities in the first quarter and also what we've done in April. We are not right about, we do try to pick businesses that we think we understand. We don't buy the S&P 500. And we like to buy the entire businesses when we buy them. But we don't get a chance to do that very often. Most of the best businesses are not available for sale in their entirety. But we don't mind in the least buying partial interests in businesses, and we would rather own 6 or 7 or 8%, of a wonderful company and regard it as a partnership interest essentially in that company, and that we get an opportunity to do that through marketable securities, and sometimes we get more opportunities than others. And with that, I hope I've convinced you to bet on America. I'm not saying that this is the right time to buy stocks. If you mean by right that they're going to go up instead of down, I don't know what they're going to go in the next day or week or month or year. But I hope I know enough to know. Well, I think I can buy a cross section and do fine over 20 or 30 years. And you may think that's kind of for a guy 89 that's taking kind of an optimistic viewpoint. But I hope that really everybody would buy stocks with the idea that they're buying partnerships in businesses, and they wouldn't look at